with me, Jay, and rather than pre-recorded, this time we're going to live stream. So fingers crossed. Could somebody in the live chat please let me know that you can hear me or see me, if that's all right? I'm going to assume that that was a resounding yes. And I'm not going to bother introducing Jay, because if you're here, then you know who he is. But he tells me there's lots of new stuff and it's quite fast-paced, the narrative of the preservation of the Quran. So I'm going to hand him over to speak, and I'm just going to jump in with some silly questions at some stage. Then we're going to have hopefully Rob Christian come along. We're going to ask some questions to Jay that I've been given in advance. Also, then you've got the opportunity to type question in capital letters with your question, and potentially a call in at the end. So stay tuned and listen to Jay. Jay?
Okay, thanks, Kay. This has been a fascinating, roller coaster to 2020. 2020, I think most people will remember for the COVID and the pandemic. Maybe some of you, some of those of us here in the United States will remember it for the very contentious election that's coming up. But for those of us working in Islam, and that includes Kay, myself, others who are working in Islam, we're going to remember 2020 completely different. This is the year that everything seems to have just blown open. And a lot of that is possibly because of the pandemic, because many of us have had to stay home. Many of us, because we're home, we're doing a lot more research. Because we're doing a lot more research, then we're getting a lot more requests to do live streams like this, and also Zoom webinars and many other teaching that I've been doing. I've been more busy now than I've ever been in any of my last 40 years of ministry. But as we've been delving into the historical critique, and that's what we're talking about, looking at Islam historically, we've always known that the traditions from the 9th and 10th century have been wrong. We've always assumed that because they're written so late, 9th and 10th century, for what was happening in the 7th century. And because they were written so late, 200 to 300 years too late, and hundreds of miles away, people like al-Bukhari, Bukhara. Where's Bukhara? Well, that's in Uzbekistan. Tabari, who is one who is first to write down the tafsir and the tahriq. Well, where is he from? Tabaristan. That's northern Iran. So those are hundreds of miles away, hundreds of years later. Nothing to do with Mecca and Medina. They never lived in Mecca and Medina. They never were in Mecca and Medina. They did the work in Baghdad, of all places, which is way up north again. And everything we're finding now, everything with this coming down the pike, everything that we're looking at from the 7th and 8th century, notice 7th and 8th century, not 9th and 10th century, everything from the 7th and 8th century comes from much further north, much, much further north, hundreds of miles north. We can't find anything from Mecca and Medina. We can't find anything from that area known as the Hijaz. The Hijaz or Hejaz, that's that central part of Arabia where Muhammad was born. Mecca, this supposedly, according to traditions, he was born there. He lived there till 622 when he moved up to Medina and took about 80 followers with him. That would be great. And that history has always been there when we've always looked at it. And that's the only narrative we have. And yet now we're going back to the 7th and 8th century and saying, where is this city called Mecca? Can't find it. Where is this man called Muhammad? Can't find him. Where are these Jews living in Medina? Can't find them. No Jews anywhere in Medina at all. Not that early and not that far south. So this is what's been fascinating. We didn't really know what we were getting into. I remember first hearing about this back in 1995 when I was studying under Dr. Gerald Hotting at the University of London at SOAS, School of Orient and African Studies. And I remember him saying that there are some real problems with the emergence of Islam, with the beginning of Islam historically, and he's a historian. And I remember taking his class there in 1994. So we're talking 26 years ago. So this is something I've known about. Kay, how old are you?
It is very impolite to ask, but you can assume that I was for sure alive in 1994 and I was probably paying taxes. Yeah.
Okay, so you were still alive, but some of those people, oh my goodness, I thought you were a lot younger. You look a lot better than your age. All right, well, sorry, I am, but in this case, it does you a favor. You look great for however old you are. But for many of those who are listening, were not even alive in 1994 when I was getting this material and hearing it and seeing Muslim after Muslim leave the class, slamming the door, angry by what they were hearing. And they were angry for a very good reason, because nobody had ever shown them or had ever introduced to them this new historical material. And it's not the very difficult material. It's basically looking at buildings, looking at manuscripts, looking at documents, looking at coins, looking at inscriptions, because these things still exist from the 7th century. But this year, 2020, whereas when it all really started coming together. And I remember I was in London. Remember last year, about a year ago, I was there in London. I came to London. I was coming back from another country, and I stopped in to see Hatun and you guys, and we went down to Speaker's Corner. I got up on the ladder, and Hatun says, "Hey, let's go to the British Museum. I think there's some material that you'd like to see." So we went to the British Museum, and she showed me some coins on display in a new gallery that had just been constructed on Islam. And there was one coin that I looked at that had the shahad on it, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but it had it attributed to Muawiyah, the first of the caliphs for the Umayyad Caliphate, and he came to power in 661. And I said, no. You can't have the shahada. You can't have any reference to Muhammad that early. That's 30 years too early. I'm sure they got that wrong. So I remember coming back to the United States, and I started looking in numismatic journals, and I started looking up, and I started finding suddenly a whole treasure trove of coins. The great thing about coins, Kate, is that coins don't disintegrate. They don't deteriorate. They're pristine. They're as good today as the day they were minted. And you just need to look at them. You just need to look at the faces on the coin. And there is the coin of Muawiyah. And there's no La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah on any of his coins. Now, he was the first of the great caliphates, what we have always thought was Islamic. We've always known the Umayyads as the Islamic Caliphate. He was one that destroyed the Caliph Ali, the adopted brother, son of Muhammad. So we've been told by the traditions, right? What's the tradition tell us? But fascinating enough, as I started looking at these coins and I started making video after video after video and putting them up on Fander Films, I started getting all these emails coming in from numismatists. Now, numismatics is the study of coins. So these were experts in coins who had these coins themselves. They already knew about these coins. They had already been studying these coins. A few of them even had them in their collection. And they said, we have always been curious about these early Islamic coins because when we look at them, there's nothing Islamic about them. There's nothing Islamic on any of these coins. And yet these are coins from 620, from 630, from 640, from 650, up until 661 when Muawiyah comes into power. And he is a big caliph. And so he mints his own coins with his name on it. And he has a picture of Khosrau on the back. And he has two different sets of coins. He has over here in the West, which is up in Syria. This is Syria, where he was headquartered. Those coins are either gold soliduses or they're copper coins. Over in the East, which is the Sassanid area, which is the Persian area, those coins are in silver, or tin. And so two completely different genre of coins, which makes sense because the Sassanians always use tin and silver, and the Byzantines use gold and they use copper. But when he looked at these coins, these no longer were Byzantine coins. These were now Arab coins. Now they're in Arabic. The language is Arabic. And the Arabic does, and one of the things about coins, which you always do whenever you come to power as a leader or as a caliph or as a king, the first thing you do is you mint new coins. Why? Because you're now the man on the block. You're the one that wants to introduce yourself. You don't have radio. You don't have television. You don't have newspapers. What do you have? You have coins. Why? Because everybody touches coins. Everybody has to use them for their commerce. So you quickly go to the different mints, and you go to the mints there in Syria, and we see the mints there. They're all there. You can see where the mints are. These are well known in the 7th century. This is not something that is not historical. It is absolutely historical. We can know the names of the mints. We know where they're located. They're all in what is today Lebanon, Syria. And they start minting coins, and they put their image on it, and they always put either their name or they put a religious icon to show what religion you belong to. And then they always put the name of the mint, and they always put the denomination of the coin. Fascinating. Now, listen, I'm not an expert.
At this point, because at some stage, as far as I'm not an expert on coins, although I do collect them, but just for sure not Arab ones or 7th century. But I'd assumed that Islamic caliphate coins would have no image on them because of the prohibition or because of the hadith or the stories that images
exactly
wrong.
Yet so these all have images.
Yeah,
that's the first problem. These have images. Islam does not allow images, right? So we've been told. Who is the one that told us that there's no permission for images?
The imams, the scholars.
the Islamic traditions.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the traditions that tell us that. It's the sirah, it's the tafsir, it's the tahriq, it's the hadith that tell us that. These are the Islamic traditions that tell us everything about how Islam began. And on there, they're very clear that no images are permitted at all. This is anathema in Islam. Yet all these coins have images. And all these coins are Arabic.
Yeah, you can't have any angels coming in if you've got any pictures or puppies or bells, I think. Something
all this is something that you're now, and everything you're going to quote from me, okay, comes from the 9th and 10th century.
Right.
So always remember, everything, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'll ask you, where are you talking about? What? Yeah. And this is what the numismatists were saying. They were saying the same thing, just like you. They're saying, how can we interpret these coins when these are supposed to be Islamic coins? What are images doing on them? More than that, look what the images are holding. They're holding crosses. A cross in their hand and a cross above their head. Ooh, how can you have a king who's a Muslim with a cross above his head and a cross in his hand, unless he's a Christian? Ooh,
yeah.
Now, I said to them, and I said, okay, listen, what you're trying to do, I call this the Islamic dance. You're just dancing the Islamic dance. And the Islamic dance always says, we will always do what the Muslims have told us, like you just did 5 minutes ago.
Also, you can't have a dance without music, I'm afraid. And that's also haram. So break your heart.
The Islamic dance starts from the premise that everything we see, everything we look at, we're going to use the Islamic traditions to interpret it by and impose those traditions on everything we see. So I said to them, hold on a minute, you're numismatists, you have these coins in your possession, you're historians, because numismatics, the whole reason you're doing this is because you're looking at the history of these different ages. You've got these Islamic coins, and then you're saying these are Islamic coins, but there's nothing Islamic about them. Yeah. There's Christian coins is what you're looking at. These are Christian coins with images of people, both of which are anathema in Islam. Yeah. What's more, have you noticed that there's no reference to anything Islam? There's no reference to the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There's no reference to Muhammad on them. There's no reference to any of the word Mecca, or there's no reference to anything of that is Quranic that we can see. There's no reference to any people called Muslims, and there's no reference to any religion called Islam on any of these coins. Those are the things that these coins should be replete with, because when you mint coins, you introduce not only yourself, you also introduce everything that's important about you. You introduce your religion, number one. We don't do that today. But back in the 7th century and the 6th and all those centuries, that was the most important thing. You represented a god or a religion or some type of ism, So that's why you would expect the coins to be replete with these references. Nothing. So I said, forget about traditions. Don't even use the tradition more. Now look at the coins anew. Just look at the coins without asking what the Islamic traditions are saying. Go ahead.
Could a possible explanation be that Mohammed's fiscal policy was more of a take rather than a dish out kind of economy, so that the coins that came into circulation were purloined or stolen, basically?
Okay, absolutely. And that could be well true, except that these coins are being minted in 620, 630, 640. These are not old coins. These are brand new coins with the dates on them. More than that, they also have the images of their rulers on them. And we can't find any of them that have Abu Bakr's name on them, that have Umar's name on them, nothing with Uthman's name on them, and nothing with Ali's name on them, to say nothing of Muhammad. The first 4 caliphs, we can't find any reference, not even on the inscriptions, on the rock inscriptions. These guys just don't exist anywhere historically. The only thing we know about Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali comes from the traditions. And I'm going to put one more caveat. Which traditions? They're all from the Abbasid era. They're all from 749 and later. That's hugely significant. You're going to see why. And I'm just putting up a big video tonight that goes through all of this. I just did a 3-hour lecture yesterday. I've whittled it down to around 2 hours. That's going to go up on Fander Films. This is going to blow everything out. This is going to be kind of I call it the quest. I've done 5 lectures on Qs. I call them the Q lectures. One is the Qibla. The next one was the coins. The third one was the Qiraat. Then there was the Qurans. Now was the quest. All beginning with Q. I know I can't spell right, so coin sounds like a Q to me, so we'll go ahead and call it a Q. But these are the 5 Q lectures. And so this was the last one. It's now going up tonight. It's going to do all of this that you're just asking. What are we going to do with the 7th century? Where is this quest for this religion called Islam, the quest for this man called Muhammad? Where is he? We can't find him. And that's what's fascinating to me. When you go back to history and starting with the coins, just look at the coins. Then you will see, okay, we're getting a completely different paradigm, a completely different idea, a completely different model of what was happening in the 7th century. And it is not pretty for Islam at all.
It seems to me that some reverse engineering may have like taken place, some romanticizing, some outright, I can't use that word, fabrication, and for sure innovation. I guess it's very similar to people writing in the 12th century about King Arthur. If you just went by the writings, you would assume it all happened in England as it's described, or in Wales. So yeah,
And it gets embellished with the process. Yeah, and for this reason, if you want to ask why is it that there was even a religion called Islam created, you got to ask what and who were the ones that created it, and what was their agenda. And when you ask and look and see what their agenda was, and everything has to do with politics. It is absolutely political, and it's not just political vis-a-vis theology. It's political and theological, because it's a politics that attacks Byzantine Christianity. Therefore, you have a theology that attacks everything that's important to us as Christians. And that's why almost when the man who finally does introduce the Islamic coins, the first to do so of the Malik in 692, when he introduces the Shahada, there in 691 and 692, when he builds the Dome of the Rock, there in 691, 692, and when he also introduces the Caliphal protocols, in all three of those different genres, building, coin, and parchment, in every case, the Shahada is introduced, but then look and see what else is introduced. All these references that are attacking Jesus, his divinity, the Trinity, his sonship, and his begettedness. Those 5 areas of his attack. They're all there on the Dome of the Rock. They're also there on the coins, and they're also there on the protocols. Fascinating. So what's going on here? This is the first rejection of everything that has to do with our Lord and Savior. Why? Because it's Byzantine Christianity is the major superpower. There were no Sassanids anymore. The Persians were no longer an entity. They had already been destroyed. The only other power that existed was the Byzantines. Christianity. That's why they that's why he built the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Why didn't he build it in Damascus, where he lived? Why did he build it in Mecca? Well, there was no Mecca at that time. We can't find any reference to Mecca. Mecca did not exist that early. The city itself did not exist. There may have been a hamlet there, but there was no place called Mecca. It was not given a name. And there certainly was no sanctuary there, and there was no Kaaba there that early in 692. That when he puts that coin in there, when he introduces that coin in 692, Justinian II, who is the Byzantine emperor, goes to war with him, against him. And so what does he do? Abdul Malik then introduces a brand new coin in 693. And that coin has his image on it. There he is, holding a huge sword. This is an act of war with the Shahada around him, saying now that's his thumbing his note at the Byzantines. And because of that, he then basically created an entire new rebellious movement, a political movement, which was also theological. You're right, it is theological, because everybody was theological back then. And then he introduces finally that, but then he takes his image off and introduces a brand new coin in 696. And that coin now has no image. And from that time on, from 696, there are no images on any coins. So that whole problem with iconoclasm that you just brought up actually does not get introduced till 696.
I was thinking yesterday, I was talking to somebody about a similar topic or related topic, but we were talking about the political parallels and pondering reasons as to why Islam seems pretty similar to maybe Marxism or communism, with the kind of baseline. There's no tiered hierarchy of, there's just the caliph, and then there's everyone goes by the same Sharia apparently. And I thought to myself that potentially, if you take it as a man-made religion, it was looking back toward the Jews rather than the Christians, because of the eventual denigration of Christ and the anti-Christian denial of the divinity of Christ. But that's the most similar.
Can I just say something in respect to that idea of hierarchy? I would suggest it's just the opposite, Kay. Islam is very hierarchical. So you have Allah at the top, all right, and you have Muhammad underneath him. Then you have what we know as the Khalif. The Khalif would be the one that comes under that. Then you have the ulema. Who are the ulema? They're the religious scholars.
Yeah, but under the ulema, the two top tiers, you no longer have, other than the.
Then you have the ummah underneath. But the ummah do not, and that's why if you look at almost all the historical records, it's the ulema and it's the Khalif who control everything. Then you have the Ummah, which are the believers, but that don't stop there, under which are the Al-Kitab. And then under the Al-Kitab are the Kafiyas, which are the unbelievers, the pagans, the idolaters. So we're even in that hierarchy as well. We're higher up than the pagans, but we're just underneath the Ummah. So we're not part of the Ummah. But it's that hierarchy at the top where everything is under control. And that's why it's been fascinating. Now has been upgraded, and the host is now including unlimited.
That's it. Just click OK.
Okay, so when this has been fascinating, because when you even see what Uthman did, what Uthman supposedly did, whoever this Uthman is that we can't find, is it now understandable why we can't find any manuscript from his period? Bingo, that makes sense now. If he didn't exist, then there's no manuscript there. And hold on a minute, there are manuscripts, and take a look and see where those manuscripts are coming to light. And they are not from the Hijaz; they're all from up further north. Now, can you understand why these suddenly come important? Do you see these books here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9. Hatun has 37. I just bought these in August. You can buy them.
Fair enough. I'm joking.
Not one of these is the same. Not one of these is the same. Each one of them is a Quran. But these don't even come into existence until 736. This guy right here. This one here that I'm pointing to. That's the first of all of these. Of the 30 official ones. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. I'm not doing the Islamic salute. I have a question. I was just wondering, so of the like the 1st, 7th century, and then later, are any of the discrepancies, so some of them I know from Speaker's Corner are just a complete different word. One dot has made it into a complete different meaning. But are any of the meanings theologically significant? Are there any?
Absolutely. Just take these two right here. These two right here. This is Warsh. This is Hafs.
Right.
Hafs is the one that's used all over the world. This is used all over North Africa. Just these two, 5,000 differences between these two.
Wow.
5,000 differences that we have found between. This is the team in Australia has found this. And when you look at the differences, you will see that I would say a third of them have theological differences. But that's not, who cares? Who cares if there's theological difference? Remember, that's not the claim. Listen,
I do.
I know you do. But do you notice what Muslims are saying? No, Muslims aren't saying anything about theological difference. They're saying not one word, not one letter has changed.
Yeah.
That's what they're claiming. And it's not they're claiming it. It's the Quran itself that claims it. In chapter 10, verse 15, no one can change the word of God. Chapter 18, verse 27, no one can change a word of the word of God.
But they
chapter 15, verse 9, Allah guards his word. If Allah guards his word, there's not one word, not one letter. And that's why Yusuf Qadi and Shabbat Ali have been saying for decades now, there's not one word, not one letter has been changed. So who cares about what they're theologically different or not? That's the by and by. And we can spend for the next 30 years talking about that. Even when we looked at just one of them, Al-Fadi and I looked at chapter 98, verse 6, and we looked at the theological differences. Shabbat Ali did an hour and a half video trying to dispute that. And I'm sitting there and scratching my head. It takes him an hour and a half to dispute something that's just one verse. What's he going to do with the other 93,000 that we've got?
Grow old.
We have got 93,000 of these differences. Is he going to sit there and do an hour and a half video for each one of them? He doesn't even looked at them before. He didn't even know that was a discrepancy until we introduced it to him. Why is it we're doing this and they're not doing this? And that's why they're saying, so confidently, there's not one word, not one letter, because we've not done the work. We've not looked at it. We don't know. We just know that there's not. Why? Because the Quran promises it. And what we're saying is, don't trust the Quran anymore. The Quran, if it has even one word different, that means their God, Allah, has not been able to preserve it. Now, we don't make this claim as Christians. No. We would never say that about the Bible.
Yeah.
We know that it was written by men. We know that there'd be all kinds of differences in different manuscripts. That's why we have 24,000 manuscripts to look at, because we know that it's quite easy that men could manipulate it or decrete it or delete it or corrupt it. And that's why we want to get as many manuscripts. We have 10,000 Latin Vulgates. We have 5,800 Greek manuscripts, and we have another 9,000 in 11 different languages. That's why we're able to amalgamate them together, put them together. And that's why people like Bruce Spencer can say, 99.9% of the Quran, of the Bible, we pretty well know what the verses are. We know exactly what the words are. So we would make sure that we would never make the claim that the Quran makes, and we would never make the claim that Yusuf Qadi makes or any of the others. And case in point is that we don't have this problem then. As a result, we don't have this problem. This is just 8 or 9 of 30 official ones, of looks like as many as 700 that existed between the 8th and 10th century. 700 of these different Qurans that existed, according to Dr. Shadi Nasser out of Harvard University.
Okay, that leads me to a question that somebody gave me to ask pretty nicely. So if Shabir doesn't have time, unfortunately, to go through 93,000 differences at 90 minutes apiece, and if Mohammed Hijab said to me 3 weeks ago, no, it doesn't matter what Yasser Qadi says, etc., what are the holes in the narrative? Because if these discrepancies hadn't been noted within Islamic academia prior to your and Tatun and everybody else's research, what is it that gave Qadi the crisis of conscience, not faith, but what is it he can't reconcile? And now he's presumably has all this additional stuff to now try to reconcile, because if they're claiming that prior to that there literally were no differences because potentially they hadn't seen them, what was troubling them before? What are the holes in the narrative?
Very simply, and this is the holes in the narrative that was finally answered by Yasser Qadi after half an hour of berating by Muhammad Hijab. Finally said, I'm going to put a blank piece of paper. Which are you going to write there? That's the problem right there. What are you going to write on that blank piece of paper? Remember, every Muslim since they were knee-high to a grasshopper has always known that there is one Quran.
Yeah.
One Quran. And that Quran has never changed in 1400 years. It can't. Because if it's one Quran, this is the eternal Quran, how can puny humans even change one word of it? If even one word is changed, it takes away the whole authority for an eternal Quran.
Yeah.
It's the eternality that is the problem here.
Yeah, because
the
it
eternality.
Yeah.
If since it's eternal, it no longer is open to human change, human manipulation. If you even intimate that there's one piece of one Quran or one word or one letter that has been changed, it takes away that eternality, it takes away that credibility, and it takes away any notion that a man named Muhammad even received it. Because if Muhammad could even do that, and Uthman could even do that, then what are we saying today that these guys in the 8th, 9th, and 9th and 10th century were able to do that with 93,000 differences in their Qurans? And why is it we even have these different names? If there is one Quran, why do we have Qalun? Why do we have Ibn Amir? Why do we have Ibn Kathir? Why do we have Kisai? Why do we have Khalaf? Why do we have Shoba? Why are these here? The fact that everyone has a different name is very clear that every one of them came to different ways of reading it. There are different ways of looking at the Quran. There are hundreds of ways of looking at the Quran, and there are hundreds of ways of reading it. And that means in every one of the times you have even one difference in reading, it's open to interpretation, which means it's open to a different theological interpretation.
Innovation as well. Yeah, and Mohammed confirmed at least 2 recitations. I'm going to just welcome Rob. I see that he's joined the meeting. I sent him a link a moment ago. I'm not sure if you two have met. So, Rob, this is Jay. Jay, this
Hi, Rob.
is Christian.
Hey, hello. God bless you. How are you?
What does he look like? Where's your video? I can't see him.
He doesn't.
I have a hijab on, like Allah doesn't show his face, so I'm also behind a hijab. So
I have no idea who you are.
I hope everybody is doing okay. God bless you. Thank you for allowing me to join in.
You're very welcome. Are there any questions that you'd like to discuss with Jay, or is there anything you'd like to say on the preservation kerfuffle or far?
Sure. This is really an interesting topic, and we can go all kind of directions. But about the preservation of the Quran, it's funny that Muslims always claim that they have so many ahruf, and when you ask them what are the ahrufs, we will get tons of explanations. Some of them call it modes, others calls them letters. So they can't even agree what those 7 ahruf are. Literally, it means letters. But what are those letters? Nobody can say what they are. And we know that Uthman, he burned 6 of the 7. So we should have only 1. And who gave Uthman the authority to burn manuscripts? I mean, back in the old days, they used to write on bones, stones, and whatnot, animal skin. So who gave Uthman the authority to burn original manuscript? And what does it tell you when someone like Uthman, probably big chance that he did not even exist, as our brother Jay Smith said, but let's say he did exist, who gave him the authority to do so? Did Muhammad say, go burn my ahrufs? There's something fishy going on here, right? What do you want to hide? What do you want to hide?
Well, I think everything you've just said the last 5 minutes comes from Al-Bukhari, volume 6, book number 61, hadith number 510. And if you look at that, that is again the 9th and 10th century. He's just quoting 9th and 10th century garbage. But this is I call it garbage because really it's so late, it's so late. But let's just unpack that, Rob, because it's fascinating. Everything that you have just is what every Muslim tells me. That's the narrative. That's the only narrative that's there. Stop and ask. In that same hadith that you just quoted, it does say why he had to do this. And it says very clearly that Hudayfa was up in Azerbaijan, battling in Azerbaijan against the Azerbaijanis. And there he came across other Muslims from Syria and from Iraq. And I assume they were from Basra and Kufa. And they went to the mosque. And when they were in the mosque, they heard the Quran being recited a different way. That's why Hudayfa comes tiddling back down to Medina and talks to Uthman and says, we cannot do what the Christians have done. Must make sure we don't have more than one Quran. We must make it in the Qurayshi dialect. We must make it in this dialect. And therefore eradicate all the other dialects. So that's the reason why he had to do that, because there was a multiplicity of Qurans being recited there at the Battle of Azerbaijan. That he does by getting Zayd ibn Thabit to come and write it out, and then he gets 3 others to help him, Alas, Zubair, and Hisham. Take a look at who Alas, Zubair, and Hisham are. Do you know who they are?
They are not the ones who Muhammad told them to go to.
No, so
Muhammad
who are
said
they?
They are basically people who were not really Sahaba, basically.
So who are they?
I have no idea who they are, to be honest with you.
They are the son-in-laws of Uthman.
Yes,
they were married to Uthman's daughters.
Yes.
So they're nothing more than family members.
Exactly, yeah.
They have no authority. Correct. They are no scholarship. They are only one. There's only one reason why they were chosen, because they were in the family of Uthman. Uthman chose them so that he could control it, and so therefore he would have control over the finished product. Now stop and think. That finished product then was sent to 5 cities. It was sent to Yathrib, it was sent to Mecca, it was sent to Basra, it was sent to Kufa, and it was sent way up to Damascus. So those are the 5 cities. And with every one of those copies of this Quran that was then produced by Zayd ibn Thabit, there was a reader that went with each one of them. Why did the readers go? To make sure that only that Qurayshi Quran would be the sole Quran. That's the only Quran that would exist, right? So 5
they
cities,
wanted to
5
standardize it, right? They wanted to standardize
Absolutely.
it.
And the other ones, as we know, were all burnt. They were all destroyed. So all the other 6, as you mentioned, it probably was more than 6, because at this time, I always ask Muslims, when you say 7, what are the 7 you're talking about? They say, well, it's the 7 that Muhammad received from Jibril. I say, give me the names. And they start reciting. Guess what they recite? They start reciting Ibn Kathir. They start reciting, they start Nafi. They start reciting Kisai. They start Asim. They start reciting these 7 of the Qira'at that were introduced in the 8th century. Have you noticed?
Much too late, right?
Why is it too late? What are their dates?
Is it replicated
It's
again?
8th and 9th century. 8th and 9th century, right? So that's not Uthmanic. It's not Uthmanic.
These are the one they always recite. I say, what are the 7 ahruf that you're talking about? And they say Nafi, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Abu Amir, Ibn Amir, Asim, Hamza, and Al-Qasai. Those are them. They always, and this is the same thing. Have you noticed? Yasir Qadi also recited these 7. Shabir Ali also recited these 7. I said, you cannot use these 7. These 7 don't even begin to appear until 736. Muhammad died in 632. This is 100 years later, and they continue up until 905. That's almost 300 years later.
That's
so
the
these guys didn't
to be
even live in the
specific.
same century as Muhammad. They didn't even come from the same area. Look at them. When you look at those 7, 5 of them come from Kufa, Basra, and Damascus. Only 2 of them come from the Hijaz. They don't live in the same century. They don't live in the same city. They're hundreds of miles away, and they're hundreds of years distance. No one's looking at the dates. No one's looking at a timeline. And I said, you guys are so confused. You're so confused because you haven't done the study we're doing. We're the ones who are putting it on a timeline. We're the ones that are looking at the names. We're the ones that are dating them. And we're also placing them on a map. And until you do that, stop confusing the world, saying that these are the 7 that Muhammad received, or these are the 7 that Muhammad knew. Because 5 of those 7 come not from where Muhammad lived. They come from those other cities where Uthman burned and destroyed them because they were corrupted. So how could Muhammad have even known of these dialects, since he never was in those areas? He never learned those languages. He would have never known those dialects. He would never even know what they were. How could he therefore then repeat them and recite them in the 7 different languages when they don't even come into existence as far as in the Islamic world until the 8th century? Because those cities were not under Islamic control. They were not under Islamic control while Muhammad was living.
The thing also,
They only get under Islamic control or Arab control until 638 to 650. That is 20 to 30 years after Muhammad died, 15 to 20 years after Muhammad died. So you can see this makes no sense historically. This makes no sense when you put it on a timeline. This makes no sense theologically, and it makes no sense absolutely because when you talk about, as you just said, Rob, they don't even know how to identify it. They don't even know how to define it. You talk to every Muslim, you get every Muslim's different opinion. But when you talk to Yasir Qadhi, he says very clearly that the Ahruf are these original 7, and the Kirat are the ones that come in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. When he doesn't realize those original 7 are the same, the ones that he quotes from the 8th century. And that's the only thing they've got. But here's even more damaging, Rob. Listen to this. Those 7 that were chosen, okay, these 7 that I'm just talking about here. So these guys right here, these 7, who chose them?
Exactly.
Ibn Mujahid. When did he choose them? 936. That's the 10th century.
Much too late.
300 years.
Much too late.
But hold on a minute. Who chose these guys over here? Because you notice, Hafs is not in these 7. Did you notice that?
Yes.
Warsh is not in these 7.
But they become the best known.
These are the most important ones. These are the readers. Hafs and Warsh are not here. Where are they? They're over here. They're in the other, these are the other 14. Okay? These are the 14. Each one is chosen. Who chose these? His name is Al-Shatibi. When did he die? 1388. Ooh, wow. 1388. That's the 14th century. That's 700 years later. Hold on a minute. We've got these guys down here. We've got another 3 readers and another 6 transmitters, which makes 9. Who chose these guys? His name is Al-Jazari. When did he do that? 1429. That is the 15th century. So it takes them, that's 800 years after Muhammad. It takes them 800 years to get all 30 together. All 30 that we use as known as the authoritative Qira'at, the now 30 Qira'at are not chosen until the 15th century. That is 800 years after Muhammad. Now, why haven't we been told this before? I didn't know this before June. I didn't know this before Yasir Qadhi went public about it.
I think that's potentially the problem. I think there wasn't a piece of paper big enough for him to write every single version on. So maybe
you now see why Shadi Nata says, don't ask me this question. We don't talk about this in public. This is not something you must be filming me about. Come and take my class. I would like to know if anybody took his class, if Yasir Qadhi ever explained what I just explained to you. I don't know of one Muslim that has put that on a timeline, that has asked the question we're asking today. And that is, you cannot have these readings that Muhammad knew about that were only being introduced and only being chosen 800 years after the fact. Exactly. You cannot get away with that. Yeah. And you've got to be honest, Muslims, and stop lying to us, because this lie has gone on and on and on. No wonder Muhammad Jahijab had to ask him that question. And that's why it took him half an hour when he finally put his hand out there and he said for the second time, okay, what are you going to write? Are you going to write Qalun? Is it going to be Hafs? Is it going to be what? Is it going to be Ibn Kathir? Whose Quran is going to be on this? And what was Yasir Qadhi's final response?
I think
after 25 minutes?
Correct.
They're all the Quran, all of them. All 30 of them are the Quran. All 30 are now the Quran. Now remember, that means you take a little bit of this, you take a little bit of that, you mix it around, and you finally get the Quran. That's the Quran he was saying. He had no idea that we have been studying these 30 Qurans, and we have found 93,000 differences just between 23 of them. We're not even finished yet. Just with 23 of them, we found 93,000 differences. Just between Warsh right here, Warsh over here, and Hafs over here. These two right here, the two most popular today. There are 5,000 differences just between those two. And I've got them right here. Here are the two they are. There's Warsh, there's Hafs. Hafs over here, Warsh here. 5,000 differences. So how can he say that both are the Quran? How can he say that both of these exist in heaven? How can he say that both of these came down to Muhammad? Remember, Warsh did not even write this down until the 8th century, late 8th century, early 9th century. This was not even in existence until the 9th century. So how could Muhammad have known about it? Ooh, I love that. And that's why this is all proving to be a lie. No wonder this is a crisis of faith for him at Yale University back 25 years ago. No wonder. And when he was asked by Muhammad, was this a crisis of faith? He said, no. This is a crisis of knowledge. But I'm absolutely sure that Tawatur, I'm absolutely sure that the Quran is preserved. I'm absolutely sure that there has been no changes. It is completely preserved. He went into this mantra. Just went into this memorized mantra. This is what all Muslims do. And that's exactly what Muhammad Hijab is doing with you at Speaker's Corner. This is the mantra. This is the Islamic dance again. It's another one of those dances. They just dance it and they dance it. And they don't want you to disturb it. And they don't want you to get them off key. And they don't want you to get them off rhythm. Just let's do this dance. This is the dance we've been taught since we were the AI to a grasshopper. Please don't destroy that dance is what they're saying. Because they have to have that dance. Because if you ever stop that dance, if you ever stop that rhythm, if you ever stopped that the little song they do, if you ever stop that, everything comes crashing down. Everything comes crashing down, and it's starting to crash down. No wonder they had to delete that interview. They both had to delete their interviews. You can, if you delete something, that's an admission right there that you cannot answer this question. And that's why he said, do not ask me this question in public. This is not something we bring out in public. We have a respect for the Quran, and we have a red line beyond which we don't go. We don't go beyond that red line. Well, folks, now you're in America, now you're in Britain. There are no lines here. We don't have any lines in Christianity. We do not have any lines anywhere in Christianity. You can ask the Bible any question you want. There are no restrictions. Yes, we have a respect for the Bible, but that's the reason why we have a respect for the Bible is because it has been asked of every question. Yes. It has gone through every one of the historical critiques. It was really historical criticism, redacted criticism, source criticism were really birthed on the Bible. And because of the Bible has gone through every one of those criticisms and has answered every one of them, we can sit back and say, folks, ask it any question you want. We will not put any fatwa on your head. We will not sit there and try to censor you. We will not try to delete you off the internet. We will not try to any ways to send thousands of people to try to shut you down out of Speaker's Corner. We will not threaten you. We will not do a thing for you. In fact, we will encourage you to ask the question because our Bible can take that and our Lord Jesus Christ can take it.
Amen. Amen. And the funny thing is, you said a very important thing, Brother Jay. The thing is, it took them 700 years, and that's really important. What I found really damaging is still after 700 years, they did not fix the many grammatical and spelling mistakes in the Quran. Even the word Quran, just go to the Hafs Quran, the Hafs version. Allah, we know it's not Allah. There's nothing called Allah, but Allah cannot decide to write the name of his book correctly. In many ayahs, like if I'm not mistaken, 168 ayahs of the Hafs Quran, the Quran is written like this, Quran. And the rest of the ayahs, it's written like Quran. So we should ask Allah to fix his Hafs Quran. Is it Quran? Please decide, is it Quran or Quran? And there was actually an interesting article from a Saudi journalist a couple months ago. He asked the Saudi government, please, for the love of God, fix the at least 2,500 mistakes in the Quran. We see, for example, another example, the word skies. Sometimes they write it as sumut, and sometimes they write it with two alifs, samawat. So is it samawat or sumut? And there are many.
Rob, let me ask you this.
mistakes.
Rob, let me jump in real quickly and ask you, why is it they didn't do what you're doing? Why is it they didn't correct the grammar?
Because no one dares to do that. And they,
let me ask you, back you up. I'm going to keep backing you up on this, Rob. There is, I want to show you, you can see where I'm getting at. One step back. So how did they choose these different qira'at? What was the criteria?
Can you rephrase the question? I don't exactly know.
How did they choose? How did they choose Ibn Amir? How did they choose Ibn Khalaf? How did they choose them?
I don't know what you mean. Sorry.
Are you familiar with Dr. Shadi Nasser and from Harvard University?
Yes.
Have you read his book from 2012?
No.
Okay, you need to read it because he shows you. He's the first one that's actually blown this all open, and he's coming out with a book next week. Next week, it's the next book that goes and he's going to destroy Ibn Mujahid. That's all coming out next week. So get your book. Now, what he says, and this is what's interesting, Rob, you're asking why didn't they look and change the grammar? Did you notice that in every case, when every one of these was chosen, including this guy right here, Hafs, when this was chosen, they never opened one page to look at what was written inside. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
They didn't even look at one page. So why did they choose Hafs? Why did they choose Wash? Why did they choose Qalun? Shadi Nasser puts it there, and he puts it in graph after graph after graph. The reason they were chosen had nothing to do with what was written inside. The reason they were chosen was how many students they had underneath them. It had to do with a popularity contest.
Yes.
It
And
had
there's
to be
only
the number, what they call
Yeah.
the isna, the strands of
Yes.
studentship. This
Yeah.
and in some cases, like Waters, this one here had nothing to do with the strands, because he had not near as many strands as two others who were from Medina, and he was not even from Medina. He was from Cairo, and that's why he was chosen, because he lived in Cairo. It had nothing to do with what was written inside. It had nothing to do with the grammar. It had nothing to do with whether this corresponded with Nafi, he was in the stable with. In fact, there was nothing at all that did a comparison between the two. Now, how do you do textual criticism? How do we do that with the Bible? Whenever you do a textual critical analysis of the Bible or any other ancient piece of literature, whenever a new manuscript comes into light, whenever a new manuscript is uncovered and brought to the public sphere, the first thing you do is you take it and you compare it word for word,
Exactly.
letter for letter, with
Exactly.
the original manuscript. You always go to the original one, and if there are any differences between the two, you throw it out, because it's a corruption. It is nothing more than a perversion of that. That is called textual criticism. That was not done once with any of these, and it's still not been done today.
Original, because
So can you then understand when we come to them and say there are 93,000 differences? They never heard that before. They had no idea. Not one Muslim listen, this has been going on for 1,000 years. These books they're all from the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. That's 1,000 years, folks. And in 1,000 years, nobody did a textual critical analysis of any of these, including this guy here. So why was this guy chosen? This is the Hafs. This is the official one today.
Because of one guy, right? One guy in Al-Azhar.
His name is Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad. He was from Cairo University. He was there, and al-Azhar. What was his criteria for choosing this?
As you said, he had many students. Popularity contest.
No.
It wasn't reliability, Jay. It
had nothing to do with reliability. It didn't even have nothing to do with his students, because he didn't even look at his students. What was the reason he chose it? The Ottomans had chosen it. And remember, the Ottomans were still in power theologically, not politically, but in power theologically in 1924. They were the ones that had always used it. Why did the Ottomans use it? Because of where he lived. He was from Kufa, which is the closest to where their capital was. So they chose him because he was from Kufa, which is one of the corrupted scripts, which is one of the corrupted dialects, which is the one that Uthman burned. And yet they chose it because of the fact of familiarity and because of simplicity. It had nothing to do with textual reliability. It had nothing to do with grammatical credibility. It had nothing to do with anything of authority other than the fact where he lived and the fact that he was easy to read.
Exactly. And that's the problem with Muslims. They always say, Sami'na wa ata'na. We heard and we accepted, right? We heard and obey. So they don't study. They only hear what their scholars have to say, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's why it's so good. Can you see how easy this is for us? All of this stuff I'm telling you that I've only learned since June. It's only taken 4 months because of people like Shadi Nasser, people others who have actually unpacked it and who have actually gone through and looked at the original sources. And that's why it is so easy. None of you guys are so lucky. Listen, when I started this work 40 years ago, I had nothing that this good. We had nothing that was this visual. We had nothing that was this simple. We had nothing that actually anybody, all the people that I'm teaching, they don't know a word of Arabic. And they don't have to. You don't have to know a word of Arabic to understand textual criticism. You don't have to know a word of Arabic to look at a coin. You don't have to look at a word of Arabic to realize what a coin is saying and what an inscription is saying. You don't have to know a word of Arabic to know any of this, to realize that Islam has not done its homework. And now we're hammering it, and it looks like the Achilles heel of Islam is historical criticism. And here's the great thing about it. Everything Rob and Kay, the three of us have been talking about today. Have you noticed? Everything we've been talking about is as neutral as you can get. We're not, there's nothing hatred about what we're saying. There's nothing Islamophobic about what we're saying. This is straight textual criticism. This is straight historical criticism. This is called redacted criticism. This is called source criticism, going back to the sources for every one of these texts, going back and seeing what has been redacted back. These seven that were there in the 8th century were redacted back to the 7th century without realizing that you can't do that because they're written so late. These are the kind of criticism you should be doing on any university level. This is absolutely neutral. This is not a Christian polemic. Anybody can do what we have just said in the last hour. And that's why it is open to everybody to use. Now, these kind of criticisms were created and really birthed on the Bible. They are now being applied to the Quran, and we're destroying the Quran. And people like you, Rob, who understand Arabic, and people like Al-Fadi who understand Arabic, you can actually read the original text and go back and see where these grammatical mistakes are. And that's why we need you guys to keep plugging away and showing us where these grammatical mistakes are, and how is it, if these are really from God, if these are really eternal from heaven, how can God make these kind of mistakes?
Exactly. And even if you look to the Hafs and you study it, and especially if you know the Arabic like we do, the damaging thing is when we go through the grammatical sources and whatnot, we see that Allah, or the writer of the Hafs Quran, doesn't even know the difference between the forms that are maybe female, masculine, or feminine. So some sentences, they start talking with a masculine form of words, and then suddenly in the same sentence, they are continuing with totally different. So you start with masculine and then you continue with feminine, and also the other way around. So also the sentences, the ayahs in the Quran don't add up, because in Arabic language, especially in the Semitic language, there are words that are feminine or masculine. So the writer of the Quran, the one who wrote the Hafs Quran, doesn't even know difference between feminine and masculine. And those are only a couple of things that we can talk about. We didn't even discuss the historical disasters in the Hafs Quran, stuff like, or examples like Haman, who lived actually in Persia, not in Egypt, because if we go to the Quran, we see that the Pharaoh is commanding Haman to build him a tower. But wait a second, Haman lived in Persia. He had nothing to do with Egypt, or let alone with Pharaoh. So, and these are a couple of things that should allow any Muslim to think. God gave you brains, use them, and you will see when you are doing your homework, you will not stay a single second in this man-made cult.
The thing is, if the Quran itself says if you find one contradiction, I mean, that's a pretty impossible standard. That's, I mean, for something that is the truth, even, which I believe the Bible to be, even if somebody incorrectly, with all innocence, transcribes it incorrectly, there may come a not in a logical sense a contradiction, but there may be error. But that doesn't then presuppose that the entirety of the truth becomes less true or, untrue. Whereas the Quran claims that it has the truth and is incorruptible in the first place. So that disproves its own statement, therefore introducing error and thereby rendering the whole thing pretty useless, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I wanted to give an example, since we started to talk about the grammatical mistakes and the spelling mistakes. If we go, for example, to chapter 16, Surah An-Nahl, and I know that Brother Jay knows all about this chapter, especially when it's talking about the bees and the scientific disasters. But let us stick with the differences between the feminine and the masculine forms of words. In chapter 16, ayah 66, the ayah is talking about al-an'ami, the cattle, and suddenly, because this is a feminine word, suddenly, if we continue reading, it's talking about butunihi. So how can a sentence start with a feminine word and suddenly end with a masculine form of word? So al-an'ami, the cattle, is a feminine word, and butunihi is a masculine word. According to Arabic grammar rules, that should not be possible. And if we go to chapter if we go to chapter 23, ayah 21, we see actually the same sentence, the same ayah basically, but here Allah is correcting himself using feminine and feminine word. Suddenly we see that Allah needs to correct his mistakes. In chapter 16, ayah 66, he does not know the difference between feminine and masculine. Suddenly Allah needs to change in chapter 23, ayah 21. He needs to change his mistake, fix his mistake, and say butunihi, butuniha versus butunihi. So clearly the one who wrote the Hafs Quran did not know much about grammatical rules.
Here's one for you, Rob. Let's see. This is a good one you're going to love. I don't know if have you read Al-Jalad in 2017, or have you read this book here? the Quran and its Biblical Reflexes by Dr. Mark Dewey from 2018. If you don't get this book, you need to get it. This is what he has found. Both Jalad, who has done his doctoral thesis on this material, has looked at the Arabic in the Quran. And in the Quran, you'll notice that it has a ta marbuta, which is the at sound at the end of the letter of the word. And you have the alif maksura, which would be the sound, like the S shape at the end of the word. And then you have the aleph, which is the aleph, the D word, the definite article, which is all right through the Quran. Those three do not exist in any Arabic from the central part of Arabia in the 7th century. Are you aware of that? The aleph,
yes.
the ta marbuta, the alif maksura do not exist in any Arabic from Central Arabia. Guess where they come from?
Persian.
No, they're not Persian. They're not Persian.
They're not Persian.
They're actually
Syrian?
Nabatean Aramaic.
Aramaic.
This is from Nabatean Aramaic. This is Aramaic from the Nabatean, from what is today Jordan, where it comes from Petra. And this Arabic that is in the Quran is only found on inscriptions, in rock inscriptions, in the Petran area, which is 600 miles further north. So
that's really damaging.
Yeah, not only that, it gets even worse than that. It gets even worse than that. Guess what else they have found? So the inscriptions that are there in Mecca and Medina in the Hijaz, what kind of Arabic do they use down there? This is where Muhammad lived in the 7th century.
No.
Sabaic Arabic, which comes from the Yemen. The Sabaic Arabic, here's one of the ironies. The Sabaic Arabic does not have the ta marbuta.
Shouldn't it be Qurayshi? Shouldn't it be Qurayshi?
There is no such thing as a Qurayshi dialect. The Qurayshi dialect we now know is coming from Cyrus. It's the name for the Jews. They use the name Quraysh, which is much further north. That is from what is today Iraq. But look at the Sabaic Arabic that did exist. The Sabaic Arabic did have dots and did have vowels. Ooh, wow. If Muhammad had received the Quran from Mecca or Medina, he would have used Sabaic Arabic. Uthman would have written it in Sabaic Arabic. There is no such thing as an Uthmanic dialect. That didn't even exist in the 7th century. It would have been the Sabaic dialect, and there would have not been any problems with the Qira'at. We would not have had any Qira'ats.
Exactly. So what you're
saying, none of this would have been existed because they had already had the dots and vowels. They used the wrong Arabic. They used a very nascent form of Arabic that was coming out of Arabic Aramaic, that was coming out of Aramaic way up north, and that proves that whoever wrote the Quran, the original Quran, lived up there and did not live in the Hijaz. Ooh, I love it.
Sorry, are you saying the original person who didn't live above his throne and just popped down every while to hear the president? That's outrageous, Jay.
This has just come out since 2018. And for an Arab Muslim, for an Arabic-speaking Muslim, you need to know this, Rob. This is great stuff because this is right up your alley. Because you can say it much more authoritatively than I can say it. Because coming from an Arab speaker, you will understand that the significance of these are all these are all the last letters of a word.
Yeah, no,
they have these certain what they call grammatical functions because you cannot have an aleph at the very end, so you have to have this S shape instead. So that's why these are things that are only unique to Aramaic. They are not at all in existence in the 7th century that far south, proving that everything we now know about Islam comes from up north and none of it comes from the south.
Yeah, funny thing that you mentioned the Aramaic. I'm also an Aramaic speaker, and even the word Quran is not an Arabic word. The Quran is an Aramaic word. Let me give you an example. Quryono or Quryana depends on the dialect, if it's Eastern or Western Aramaic dialect, it's Quryono or Quryanat Faulus Shliho. That means the message or the book of the Apostle Paul. Did you catch it? Quryono, Quryana at Faulus Shliho. Faulus means Paul, Paulus, right? Bolus in the Arabic. So even the word Quran is borrowed from the Aramaic, and this is damaging.
Rob, you need to read this book. I highly recommend you get it. It's called The Quran and Its Biblical Reflexes by Dr. Mark Dewey. Now, Dr. Mark Dewey has 2 different doctorates. He has a doctorate in linguistics. That's why he's such a great linguist. And he also has a doctorate in Islamics. So he both knows Islam and linguistics. And I've never seen anybody that understands the problems, the grammatical difficulties and the difficulties with the Arabic as much as he does. It's only been out 2 years. Go get it. Put it in your library and read it, and then start using it because it is such easy material to use.
Exactly. Maybe everybody here should check it out.
Yes, but you can understand since you know Aramaic.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Right.
Listen, I'm going to have to go. I can't stay much longer because I've got
I'm
another live stream coming up.
For people in the live chat, if you want to type out a question for either Jay or Rob or myself, but I'm nothing to do with Arabic, or there may be chances for a quick call in if you want to catch Jay before he goes up. I think we'll probably only go for another maybe 20 minutes or so, depending on
I can go for about another 10 minutes.
All right, excellent. So one of our excuse me, one of our admins hopefully is listening to me at the moment, and we'll post the Skype link. And other than that, you can just type question in capital letters, and I'm just going to have a look at the live chat now. So in the meantime, Rob, what was your live stream on today? What were you speaking about earlier without wanting to bore you, like to repeat yourself?
well. I started actually yesterday, and I continued with refuting the Muslim apologist of today. And the funny thing is, and Jays knows this very well, Muslims, especially the Muslim apologist with the standard holes in the narrative, they've become so desperate, it's unbelievable. I caught a Muslim, and it seems that he's one of the best Muslim apologists out there. He had a debate with a Christian, and a new upcoming Christian apologist. And I was just going through videos on YouTube, and I was so shocked. You know, they were talking about the Quran, and the question was, can you tell me if Allah is a father to mankind? Is he father to mankind like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? I mean, go to the Old Testament. You will see how many prophets. Go to the book of Deuteronomy, Isaiah. You see that God is called father of the Israelites, father to mankind. But the question was, is Allah the same God? Is he father? And you know what the Muslim response was? Yes. We can say that Allah is a father. That's a lie from hell. If you say that Allah is father of mankind,
yeah.
If you say that Allah is a father of mankind, that means you are already out of Islam. No, but what did he do? He, since he knew that the Christian doesn't speak Arabic, he quoted the Lord's Prayer. I kid you not. He quoted the Lord's Prayer that Jesus gave to us in the New Testament, and he said, this is a hadith from the mouth of Muhammad. But wait, I, as an Arabic speaker, when I see something like that, I will catch you and I will refute you. So he used the Lord's Prayer. He was quoting the Lord's Prayer in the Arabic, and the first sentence starts like this: Abana alladhi fis samawat, our Father who art in heaven. And he said, this is a hadith from Muhammad. So do you see how desperate the Muslim apologists are becoming to even go to the Bible, use and borrow and steal even the Lord's Prayer, and call it a hadith from the mouth of Muhammad? I mean, truly, 2020.
It's a bit embarrassing because, like, we already had evidence.
Lord of mercy. Lord of mercy.
100 years prior to him popping along.
And imagine this. They consider this guy to be one of the best. I mean, Jai, brother Jay, what do you think? What do you think about Muslims lately who need to do all kind of mental gymnastic? They need to use our Lord's Prayer to say that it's a hadith, only because they know that Christians who are debating them, they don't know Arabic, so they can play all these kind of games. So what do you want to say to such Muslim?
Well, I think there's two things happening. One is called desperation, and the other one's called deceitfulness. The two Ds. And I think this is the typical. We're going to see an awful lot more of this. I think because of the fact they're pushed up against the wall, they've never had this kind of criticism before. They've never really had anybody criticize them. And remember, even in their own locales, in their own areas, nobody is permitted to be critical on this level. Now that we in the West are not only much more aware of these problems, we're getting a lot more sophisticated in our criticisms. When I started 40 years ago, none of this stuff existed. There was nothing. There was no book written. We had nothing to help us with. We pretty much had to do everything by the seat of our pants. Today, it's getting a lot more sophisticated. And so now we have Arabists, we have Aramaists, we have people who actually understand the language who are coming forward, like you, Rob Christian. So I thank God you're available. People like Al-Fadi and others. And so because of the fact that we are now pushing them against the wall, putting them up against the wall, what is their reaction going to be? Well, as you're going to see, they're going to either be desperate, in this case it is desperate, or they're going to use deceit. And they're using deceit in this case because they see the value of the Lord's Prayer. They see the beauty of the Lord's Prayer. They realize that this Lord's Prayer is not only is does it exist long before the Quran, but they don't have anything that's equivalent in the Quran. There's nothing that is that beautiful. There's nothing that is that personal. There's nothing that also shows the kind of God that they want today. And that's why the Lord Prayer is such a beautiful prayer. They've just applied it to the Hadith, thinking that nobody would be any the wiser. Well, people like you are the wiser, and you can hold them accountable and call them out. So thank you for doing that. God bless you. Appreciate you doing
Right.
it.
Thank you.
Wait,
It happened only on accident, to be honest with you. I mean, you can do that with a Christian apologist who doesn't know Arabic, but when you have people like Christian Prince or others who know Arabic, and we, for some reason, find that such a debate or a video, those silly mental gymnastics or lies and deception won't work. So this is why it's important for our audience. Please support all the warriors, support the Arabic-speaking Christians. We need to stand united to expose this cult. And I believe this is the very start. And we could not have dreamt in 1,000 years that people like Yasir Qari and Muhammad Hijab would come online and start the standard narrative. There are holes in the standard narrative. This is the start. And Muslims are getting desperate. It's desperate times for them. And the Islamic boat is sinking. The Islamic nation are suffering from them.
Okay, so for the final 10 to 15 minutes, I've got 2 questions that have been copied and pasted out of the chat to me. So they're to both of you or either of you. So one of them is, how come the damage doesn't seem to be reaching the Muslim community, and why is there no reaction from them other than denial? I added that part, but yeah, why is there no like genuine academic or scholarly response to account now for the, like Rob said, the Saudi Arabian reporter who's still alive, as far as I know, who mentioned all of these spelling errors and scribal errors and the desire for them to be corrected? How come there's no like outcry? Why is there no reaction, it seems?
Go ahead, Rob, then I'll go ahead and finish that one.
Yeah, but because it's when you are living in an Islamic state, especially in a country like Saudi Arabia, or you go to Egypt, people don't dare. I mean, if the moment you start to criticize the Quran or Muhammad, that means you are putting your life on risk, right? On the front lines, and nobody dares. I mean, if you have a family of children, you're going big chance that you're going to be thrown into jail and at least be beaten. So people don't dare to do it. But the Al-Azhar have been asked many times over, why are you not trying to fix the Quran? And you know what their response is? Do you want us to fix the Quran while others before us did not do so? So no one dares. It's they are scared. They don't want to step up because it's a danger for anyone who is going to criticize Muhammad, or let alone the Quran in a country in the Middle East that has Sharia law implemented.
Right, but
let me just say there are people. I think the people that who just wrote that in are just not aware of themselves. I get almost 300 emails a day. David Wood gets even more. We're getting hundreds of Muslims that are leaving Islam because of what happened on June 8th. So we are seeing it. It's just not getting into the public sphere. And the reason why is, as Rob said, if you are gonna give up Islam, and if you realize that it's been a lie all your life, and you've always had these questions, and with the emails that I'm getting and people that are posting to me, you can see a recurring thing. I always knew there was a problem. I always had a hunch. I just didn't know how bad it was until you came up with this video, or I saw that video, or I heard that interview, or I saw how you and David unpacked it. And now they're saying, now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense. The problem is, a lot of these emails, they haven't come home. I want to bring them home. I'm not interested in just destroying the Quran. I'm not just interested in destroying Muhammad. I want to make sure they come back to the Bible, and I want to make sure they come back to Jesus Christ.
Amen to that. That's
why. So we're only halfway there. We're only halfway there. But for the person who wrote this, they're not aware of this because they're not getting these kind of emails. If nothing had happened, why is it they had to delete those off the internet? What was the reason they had to delete? Both of them had to delete that interview because hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Muslims were yelling at them, were shouting at them, were saying you were going to be held responsible for our salvation now in the judgment day. And you're going to be held responsible for many of us leaving Islam because of that interview. If one little interview, just a 25 minutes of an hour and 45-minute interview, if one 25-minute interview can do that much damage on the internet,
Exactly.
that hundreds and hundreds of Muslims have now left Islam, and it could be the thousands. I would suggest that we're going to be seeing the fallout from just that interview for years to come. And in years to come, there are going to be hundreds upon hundreds of Muslims that even that person who wrote that question will have met and said it was because of what happened in 2020. It was because of that interview. And see, remember that interview, it only would have happened because we held up those 26 Qurans in 2016 at Speaker's Corner and filmed it. Had it not been for Hatun, who actually collected those Qurans, who went to those 3 countries, collected 26 of them, and had we not held them up so the whole world could see, the world will not know about this. And this is why I'm saying, those of us who are on the front edge, who are actually confronting Islam, we need to make sure that we go public with everything we know. We need to make sure that we use YouTube. Thank God for what you're doing, Kay. Thank God for what you're doing, Ra. You're doing the right thing. You're taking it public. You're forcing it onto the Muslims. You're forcing the world to see it, because until the world sees just how hopeless Islam is, how hopeless the Quran is, how hopeless Muhammad is, how hopeless the whole edifice of Islam is, and how easily it is now crashing and starting to crack. It's still cracked. It hasn't crashed yet. And that's what everybody wants. Why is it crashed? Listen, it takes a while for this to get down into the madrasas. Once it gets into the madrasas, it then gets it into the mosque. Once it gets into the mosque, it gets it down onto the carpets. Once it gets it on the carpets where the ummah are, you're going to see not just hundreds, not thousands, but millions who are going to be leaving Islam. So expect that to happen. It is just beginning. This is just the beginning of the crack in the dam. The dam is going to explode. And once that happens, we need you there to pick up the pieces and bring them home.
Exactly, brother Jay. The thing is, we should also not forget about the quote that a couple months ago, or I think it's even longer than that, Bilal Phillips, Imam Bilal Phillips from Canada, he said, and I quote, "It's coming. It's going to knock us over. It's going to be like a tsunami, an avalanche of apostates." So they know it's coming. They know that the Islamic boat is sinking. The ummah is drowning. They know it's coming, but they can't do anything about it because of our videos, because of the many Christian apologists who can cross the red line, which Muslims, as you said, cannot. So these are very, very, very interesting time. And Deus vult, Lord willing, it's coming. It's coming. And Muslims cannot do anything about it.
To both of you, and this can be your final question, Jay, if you have to shoot off. It says, could you ask Jay and Rob what they would like to say to those sincere Muslims that may have realized now that they have been lied to?
I would suggest them to come and watch our live shows. We do live shows almost every week. And if you have questions, you can call us live. Please don't hold back. We're not going to bite, and we are there to answer questions. I mean, I know Arabic. I can read the Quran in Arabic, and I don't need any translation, which 9 out of times is nothing but deception. I mean, just for example, chapter 66, ayah 12, the word that is used there is farjia, the private part of Mary, but all the pick any translation, they will talk about chastity. Wait a second, what has chastity to do with a female part, right? And so these people, and unfortunately, more than 75% of the Muslim ummah, the Muslim nation, they don't know Arabic, and they are dependent on the lies and deception of their shuyukh, of their scholars and imams. And we know the imams are the ones who are keeping Islam alive. Like I said, Muslims always have said, "Sami'na wa ata'na." We heard and we obeyed. They don't ask questions.
Well, Muhammad told them not to as well. Or someone said that Muhammad said, don't ask questions. Jay, what would you say to sincere Muslims who may now be feeling pretty insecure about a truth that they thought they adhered to?
Okay, I think for those Muslims who are sincere, and I know that many of them I'm talking to right now, you are sincere. You really do want to know the truth. Listen, what we're finding out about your book, the Quran, is pretty much damaging. It's damaging it not only irreparably, but you cannot, there is no other recourse. You're going to have to leave this book. It is written by men. It is manipulated by men. It has been corrupted by men. It has been changed and it has been canonized 5 different times, 5 different canons. And finally, it was canonized for the final time less than 100 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to give up on the God's word. Please don't give up on God's word. This is just the wrong word. Come on back to the real revelation. This is the one you need to come home to. Don't give up, for heaven's sakes. Listen, the God behind this book, I don't know anybody that really loves the God behind this book. This God doesn't do a thing for you. He doesn't come to earth, is incapable of coming to earth. He didn't die on the cross. He didn't die for you. He did nothing for your sins. He just tells you to all these rules and regulations. He is incapable of ever having a relationship with you. Whereas the God of this book, he not only has a relationship with you, he wants a relationship with you. He did die for you. He did come to earth. He did rise again. He did destroy death. And he's still waiting for you to come home. And all you need to do is just say, simply, I believe in you. I believe in your death and resurrection. Please, please take me home with you. So for heaven's sakes, give up this book. Come back to the bigger, the better book. This is the smaller book. Forget about this God. Come back to the bigger and better God. Forget about Isa in this Quran. Come back to Jesus Christ, because he is the one that's waiting for you.
Brother Jai, I see that your Bible is bigger than the Quran. What's
it's always got bigger for a reason.
Beautiful, beautiful.
All right. What I would say to sincere Muslims is I genuinely don't want to have former Muslim atheists running around, because from a Christian point of view and what Christ tells us, you're still in big trouble, as it were. So what I'd like you to do is in the privacy of your own home, and like no big displays in the street, because your safety may be at risk, and just, no one's supposed to make big displays. Just say a sincere prayer for God. I wouldn't say Allah, for God to reveal the truth to you. And he can do that in a multitude of ways. He can make it very subtle. It can feel like things get pretty dark for a little while, because of course the enemy doesn't want you to come to the light or the truth. But please do, just with a sincere and penitent heart. So please do be sorry for the sins that you've committed, and just ask in all earnestness for the creator of the entire universe to reveal himself to you, and that is Jesus Christ. And then you will for sure see a difference, or the truth will be proven to you, and all of heaven will celebrate when you come. That's what I'd say.
God bless you. Thanks so much, Kay. This has been fun. Thanks, Ned,
I think we're going to wrap
meeting
up
you, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe, Lord willing, we can do more live shows in the future. This was really interesting. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thanks to the Lord. I want to also ask our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to bless the audience, bless all the warriors, and we need to stand united as Christian apologists to expose this cult, this man-made cult, as our brother Jay said. We need to do something about it, and this is the start. This is the start. Lord willing, Deus vult, this is not going to be the end.
By the way,
guys, support. Oh, Deus vult. support the warriors, guys. Support the warriors. We need to do this. God bless everybody. So thank you.
I'm going to close by saying, and then I'll leave the final word to Jay. I'm going to close by saying, please do join us on Discord, Psycho Discord. The link will magically appear any moment now in the live chat. Please come and see us on Parler. Subscribe to Panda Films, also to Rob Christian, that's the name of the channel, also to K Sogo Films. I'd like to thank the anonymous person who has hosted this meeting for us. God bless you, sir. Thank you very much for staying awake this late. And God bless everybody in the live chat. And Christians, please do stop attacking each other. We've got enough persecution coming from godlessness and other major worldviews. So we'll do a live stream on persecution tomorrow. That will be at 7 p.m. UK time, right here in this space on your phone or your computer. So Jay, last words. Thank you very much.
I think you've done a great way of wrapping it up. And I want to just say to all those who've tuned in, thanks for tuning in. We're not here to be hatred. We have not said anything that's hatred today. We're certainly not Islamophobes. We actually love Muslims. Why would I spend 40 years if I didn't love you all? And I want to bring you home. I want to make sure you come home to the Lord Jesus Christ. Come on home to what I found. The peace and understanding that only Christ can give you. You can have that right now. There's no reason to get stuck up with all these rules, regulations, and all these platitudes that you have as a Muslim to a God who can't even enter time and space, a God who's done nothing for you. You don't have to worry about that God. Come and do to the God who's done everything for me, and he's done everything for you. He died and rose again, which means you can be with him forever, walking and talking in the cool of the day, just like Adam and Eve, but even better. And I'd love to be with you as well. We'll be with each other for eternity. Isn't that great? What a panoply of many different cultures, many different, and you might even get a word in. Yeah, there we go. God bless you. This is Jay, over and out.
All right, take care. And whoever's hosting this can now end the show, and God bless everybody.
God bless everybody. Thank you.
Bye. And then